Chief May should be on here also.
Yes, Chief Mays is on.
Good
Very
evening.
quiet.
Good evening. This is Mayor Bob Golden. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Haslet City Council on Tuesday, March the 24th. Call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. I'd like to do a roll call just to see who's on the call from council. Warren Robb.
Warren Robb is present.
Harold Williams.
Present.
Jessica Clark.
Present.
Patricia Hilborn.
Present.
Tanya Morrill.
Present.
We do have a quorum present. The first item is consider an act to continue the declaration of local disaster proclaimed by Mayor Golden. Rob, do you want to take the lead on this, or I can try to give some background information? I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk.
Either way, Mayor, I'm happy to address it. And then if you want to add anything, certainly feel free to, or if you want to run with it, you're welcome to. But,
why don't you go ahead from a legal standpoint, give us the background, and please identify yourself when you start talking, everybody. Thank you.
Perfect. This is Rob Alabon, City Attorney. On this agenda item, Council, as you will recall at our last council meeting, we had some discussion about a declaration of local disaster relating to the COVID-19 coronavirus. And since that point in time, there have been, as you I'm sure are well aware, many subsequent orders issued by both the state, by the governor, and by Tarrant County and other cities around our area. And at the time of our last council meeting on March 16th, there was no action taken by the city of Haslet. And the discussion at that meeting was there really didn't seem to be a huge necessity to do so from the standpoint of any orders or restrictions issued by the state that are statewide are automatically imposed on the city of Haslet, and any orders or restrictions imposed by the county by order are countywide, including the unincorporated areas of the county and the incorporated areas of the county. So those restrictions are automatically imposed upon the city. One discussion or point that was raised at the last council meeting was possibly in order to be eligible to receive any federal disaster funding that might become available, the city might need to adopt a declaration of local disaster. Since after our last council meeting on the 16th, the Texas Municipal League, in fact, did opine that in order for a city to be eligible to receive any federal disaster funding that might become available, that each city should adopt a declaration of local disaster and forward it to the governor's office. So in accordance with Chapter 418 of the Government Code, the decision to implement a declaration of local disaster is the mayor's decision to make. Under that chapter, that declaration is only good for 7 days unless it is continued or renewed by the council. And so Mayor Golden did, in fact, sign a declaration of local disaster today. I believe I'll let him speak to that in a moment. And so that has been signed and will expire 7 days from today unless the council takes further action tonight to extend it, which is why this item is on the agenda. So the council could act to extend that to a date certain, like the current county's declaration is good through April 6th, I believe, and they will likely act on it again or extend it or issue another order. That's all kind of unknown at this point, and we're not sure really how long all of these things are going to last. So you can either extend the mayor's declaration to a date certain, at which time you'd have to extend it further if that was the necessary action, or tonight you could act to extend it indefinitely with no set time limit, in which case it would last until revoked by further council action in the future. And of course, the council will probably look to the state and the county as far as when their declarations start being pulled back, and then the council for Haslet can do that in the future when the time is appropriate. So with that, let me pitch it to the mayor. Mayor, if you have anything you want to add to that, please do.
I think is what he's calling it, or anybody else's, you've probably picked up on the fact that there are often fines and penalties in some of the mayor-manager meetings that we've been conducting with the judge and his staff on a daily basis. This week it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's come up, and the DA is opined. And when Rob and I talked about this, we took that part out in that we're not going to do anything at this time, and I don't forecast that we will. Anything that's more restrictive than what the county says, we can be more restrictive. We can't be less restrictive. We're in kind of a good place in that this is a county directive or order, whatever the term is, and we have the county sheriff's department working in our city. I would contend that any violation could be pursued, whatever the right legal term is. You know, we could have an arrest, and a penalty that the county has already determined would be the applicable penalty for violating the county's directive. So with all that said, I also want to share with you that knowing that I needed to sign this prior to the possible extension of this evening, I had written kind of a cover letter, if you will, to put on the website, maybe Facebook, to let the citizens know what was going on. Understand that I wrote this morning before I signed it, and I'm going to update this because getting this in for inclusion in the water bill, for example, I thought needed to be done today. That's been extended to tomorrow, so I can say that I did it, and that whatever action y'all take on the extension, I can include that. So remember that what you're hearing was from the perspective of before I signed it today. So it's dated today from Mayor Bob Golden. Later today, I will be issuing a declaration of local disaster for the city of Haslet. As we are currently following all CDC guidelines and Tarrant County directives, you should see no change from what has been previously promulgated via Tarrant County declarations and the latest amendments thereto. We have been lucky to this point with no positive testing results, and I'm extremely proud of the effort that all of you have made to follow national, state, and county direction and diligently work to keep all of us safe. Quite frankly, my main purpose in issuing this declaration is to make the city eligible for reimbursement of funds expended to support our efforts to fight the coronavirus COVID-19. Next paragraph. At a special council meeting to be held this evening, I will be asking the city council to extend this declaration for whatever period they deem appropriate. I do want you to know that your city council is taking this threat very seriously, and your safety is our #1 priority. Please continue to follow our state, county, and city leadership as we collectively and proactively work to manage the battle with this virus. Keep an eye out for your neighbors and call us at City Hall if you have any questions or concerns. Stay safe. So if anybody has any issue with that or wants me to consider changing something, obviously I'll make it in the past tense and update this. But that's essentially the cover letter, quote unquote, for the declaration. My point here is I don't want people to get overly concerned because, God, what just happened? We put out a declaration of disaster. Nothing has really changed except that we're trying to put ourselves in line to get some federal funding. Any questions or comments on that?
This is Council Member Hilborn. First, I want to comment that, Walter, it looks like your video camera's on. Hi. We're not putting our video cameras on. I like your poster. Bob, the letter sounds great to me.
Thank you. Well, with that in mind, if nobody has any questions or comments, my recommendation to you, because we're not, hold on just a second. I apologize for that. The grandkids are over. My recommendation for council would be to continue this indefinitely. There's no teeth really to what we're doing other than to get in line for funding. So to not hassle you every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think it's April 7th is the end of the judge's directive, and they'll vote to extend it if they want to do that. And they may, from from a political standpoint, want to do that in 2-week sections so as not to alarm people more, so as not to say it's going to be forever. In our case, it doesn't change anything, although it might trigger a question. So my recommendation would be to continue it indefinitely. So I open that up for discussion and whatever y'all think.
This is Councilmember Morrow. I agree, and definitely seems the best option.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Rob. I agree. Extended indefinitely, there's really no benefit in to picking a date at this point.
Okay, if y'all are in agreement, I would entertain a motion to extend the declaration of local disaster indefinitely. And when you make the motion, please identify who you are when you do that. And whoever wants to second, please identify yourself before you say I second it.
This is Harold Williams. I move that the council continue and extend the mayor's declaration of local disaster indefinitely.
This is Councilmember Rob. I second.
Any further discussion? Hearing
I
none,
have
I'll do.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have a question for Rob real quick. Rob, if we do this indefinitely and let's say the county ends theirs on a certain date and we don't have a meeting for another couple of weeks, it's okay for our extension to continue until we meet again, or are we going to have a special meeting to cancel it?
This is Rob. I probably would recommend under that circumstance you laid out that we might try and do a special meeting but it would continue because basically you've continued it until further notice basically. And so the council will have to act in order to terminate or revoke it at some point in the future. So we can, depending on how it plays out, it can keep to the next regular meeting, or we might call a special meeting just to pull it back. Would be that's my best thought at this point.
This is Council Hill. Mayor, would it be a good idea to include in our motion that it expires when the county cancels theirs? I'm okay with having a special meeting, y'all. So just throwing that out there.
In the discussions that we've had on these conference calls, my take is that they're looking to have at least a week's notice ahead of time if there's going to be a change to the present declaration. For example, the shelter in place or whatever it's termed in the document also has included in that schools are shut down. We can't go up to Saturday night or Sunday before Monday and expect schools to be able to start. And so that discussion is ongoing amongst county, city, and school district leadership. I think we're going to have enough notice. Bob, I think we could probably include it until such time as the county, cancels theirs.
Yeah, this is Rob. I think the point that Councilmember Hilborn raised is, I think certainly by their motion, I didn't think about that when I wrote this. I think that would be legitimate if the council wants to continue and extend the city's declaration with an end, basically to expire when Tarrant County's declaration expires. I think you could do that in your motion. Maybe that's a way of not having to specifically come back and act in the future. I mean, does anybody, I don't know if Jim or anybody has any disagreement or thoughts on that. I didn't even think about that as an option, but I think that would work.
The only question I would have is if the declaration stops on a certain date, say May 1st, and we're trying to get paid for something and we put the paperwork in on the 5th of May. Kurt, do you have any feel on Chief Mays, do you have any feel on whether or not we need to have this thing in effect when we're asking for any kind of reimbursement?
Typically, you would submit after it's all over. So that won't affect us to stop and not be able to submit.
Well, I think what I'm hearing then is maybe if the Harold, if you'd like to amend your motion to state that indefinitely or until the county rescinds their executive order.
Okay, I amend it as Bob just stated.
And the second?
This is Councilman Rob. I second the amended motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Rob?
If you mean Warren, Rob, I vote aye.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Harold Williams?
Aye.
Jessica Clark?
Aye.
Patricia Hilborn?
Aye.
Tanya Morrow?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank y'all. On to the second one. Consider an act on Ordinance 014-2020, postponing the special election called for May 2nd until November 3rd, 2020. Y'all are probably aware of a lot of stuff going on right now. I think Rob shared some stuff today. If y'all didn't get that, we can certainly expound on that. But with the possibility of moving this, I reached out over the weekend to Senator Nelson, to Representative Krause, and to Representative Capriglione. I heard back from Senator Nelson within 3 hours. I sent an email and I texted all of them. I heard back in a text from Senator Nelson by early that afternoon within 3 hours. Essentially, there is a court case from 1981, Salmon versus Lamb, and I believe the Attorney General is basing his position at this point on the fact that in that decision made in 81, the governor can only move the election date to another uniform election date. So having said all that, what I would propose is, number one, moving the election. I can't imagine, I was not for this initially, but in the discussions that the mayors and managers have had with the judge the last few days, I think there's a overwhelming tide to cancel the May election. And then, Rob, if you need to talk about the legal end of that came out today, I'll turn this over to you in just a second. But my recommendation would be to postpone the May election to November the 3rd, but change the verbiage that you see in front of you and add, unless and until we get authorization to consider another date after May 2nd before November 3rd. And then the rest of the document would be the same. And that, I wasn't smart enough to dream that up. Some other city had that, shared it on the conference call, I believe yesterday, and I wrote it down. So that gives us the ability to set another date. For example, if the governor says you can have a, July 15th date, we can then say, okay, we'd like to have our election on the 15th without having to go through this process.
Can you repeat that phrase again, Mayor Golden? This is Councilman Marlowe.
So, Rob, you can help me if I get this wrong, but I think it's something to the effect that we would like to postpone the May 2nd election to November 3rd, comma, unless and until authorization is received to have another date somewhere after May 2nd and before November 3rd. You're probably writing that down so you can make the motion, but if you can make it sound better, just unless and until authorization is received for another date, but then after May 2nd before November 3rd.
And this is Rob Alabon. I'm fine with that language if that's something the council wants to do. As of this date, as the mayor said, there is no option to have the election on a different date. We either leave it May 2nd or we postpone it to November 3rd. But the language that the mayor is suggesting is language that is intended to then, if another date becomes available somehow, if the governor is able to declare, we don't know what's going to happen. The governor may actually just statewide do away with the May election, depending on how all this progresses. And in that event, maybe he opens up another door for that election to be held somewhere earlier than the November election. That currently is not on the table as an option for us, but this language the mayor was suggesting kind of leaves that open if an alternate date becomes available. And I can certainly, that's not currently in this ordinance that's in your packet, but that language can be added easily into section number 1 if that's something the council decides to do.
Okay, Tanya, I found the exact verbiage that I'd written down from the meeting yesterday. So postpone until November 3rd, unless and until another date after May 2nd and before November 3rd is authorized. Does that help?
Okay, thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
I do want to let you know that Senator Nelson and when I talked to Matt Krause yesterday, they were going to continue this fight. I think that TML is trying to get the governor to well, not realize, but I think there is an argument to be made that the governor can move that date. I don't know what's going to happen there. This just gives us a little wiggle room. I definitely think, based on going to shelter in place, and we're not going to bounce out of this real quick whenever that is lifted. Too many things need to be done between now and then. I do have an email that I received yesterday from Hyder Garcia, who's the, election clerk. I don't know what the proper term is. Diana, you can help us there. He's the head of elections in Tarrant County. He doesn't have a problem with holding the election. The county's going to be prepared. What he is concerned about is the availability of polling workers, of polling places, and cleaning supplies to keep everybody safe. And there's nobody at this point that can control what the poll workers themselves are going to decide to do, whether they're going to come in or not. So I am shifting my position from a couple of weeks ago, or even a week ago, in that I strongly urge us to postpone the election from May to November with the language that I said. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, this is Warren Robb again. Especially because all the poll workers that I've seen in the last 20, 30 years are all in the high risk group for the current condition. So I think it's rather than jeopardize them, the November date is much more likely to happen. Also, I'd like to ask Rob, has it been determined that the quarter-cent sales tax will continue to go to as designated, or will that cease if we miss this election cycle?
This is Rob Alabon. I don't have an answer for that yet. As far as, I don't think we've gotten a solid answer from the comptroller on that. And Diana, I'll let her speak up if she's heard anything in the interim since that questions have been asked. I haven't seen anything specifically on the TML updates that addresses that. I know one of the other cities we represent, Haltom City, is in the exact same situation. They have a street maintenance tax that's set to expire, and they last night they voted to postpone as well. But I don't know that we have that firm answer yet. So there potentially is the risk that for some period of time, potentially that tax might not be collected if it's postponed to November. I don't think that was the intent of allowing of postponing the election, and that may not end up being the case. But that certainly is an issue that still hasn't yet been clarified as far as I know. Diana, do you have any new information on that?
This is Diana Buchanan. No, I do not. I did send correspondence to the comptroller's office, and they contacted me and let me know that they were looking into that. And today I received a telephone call from the city of Fort Worth, who they have a measure for their crime control district tax. And so they were checking with other entities to see if we knew what we were going to do. So it's not just our question, and the comptroller has not answered their inquiries. So I doubt they know exactly how they're going to handle it at this time.
This is Rob Alabama again. So council, I'm sorry we don't have full, complete information for you, but that's the best information we have at this point.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to add that our sales tax is supposed to expire on September 30th. So we're not going to be significantly hurt, but we are going to work with the state comptroller regarding see if we can't collect those taxes during the interim prior to the November election.
Yeah, it sounds like that'd be a good point to pursue, because if the election did not pass, for example, I think there could be something in writing that we would agree to return any revenues generated in that period, but for sure we wouldn't take it in the, yeah, we'd be able to continue like we are if they'd authorize that. That might be a good way to get around that. Anybody else? Well, I would consider entertaining a motion for the approval of Ordinance 014-2010.
Go for it, Tanya.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance number 014-2020, or that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, postponing the special election called for May 2nd, 2020 to November 3rd, 2020, unless another date after May 2nd and before November 3rd is authorized. And this is Tanya Morrow.
Is there a second?
This is Council Member Hilborn seconding.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call, hearing none, I'll call for a vote, and I'll do a roll call vote. Warren Robb?
I vote out. Warren Robb votes aye.
Harold Williams?
Aye.
Jessica Clark?
Aye.
Patricia Hilborn?
Aye.
Tanya Morrow?
Aye.
Motion passes. I don't believe we need executive session. No consideration or action taken resulting from that. Anybody have anything for future agendas? Okay, I'm going to adjourn the meeting in just a second. Bear with me just a second. Diana, since we do have some of the department heads on here, do you want to ask them to stay on and do any kind of mic check or anything with them before they log off?
That's thoughtful. This is Diana Buchanan, but no, Mayor, I don't need that. Thank you.
Okay, then the meeting is adjourned at 6:29. Thanks everybody for joining in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Be safe.